I happen to really love welding. It's something that I've learned to do in the last few years, and it's a wonderful process because when you're doing it, it's quick and you can sort of throw it together, and then it's totally permanent. You can throw it on the floor and it'll just bounce. You know, it's really durable. So it's a lovely material to work from.
And what got you into welding, just out of curiosity here?
Well, I've always been interested in it. About 2 years ago, I worked on a piece like this. This is a sphere that this one happens to be about 2 foot diameter, and it's stainless steel. But I worked on a much larger piece, 10-foot diameter, a version of this in rebar that is now in the Buffalo Creek Art Center Art Park. So it's a permanent collection, part of their permanent collection now. And that, you know, because they have a really beautiful welding shop, it's very difficult not to work in metal there, actually. They have such beautiful facilities, and all the other artists that I was working with there were metal artists also. So I learned a lot working with them.
Well, it was quite an experience, because I remember talking to you over Instagram while you were there, and you had a studio all to yourself. So you were able to be very productive during that month stay, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, this year the residency was a little different because of COVID. Most of the artists that were supposed to turn up declined to come because they didn't want to fly and that sort of thing. And so there were just 2 of us for a lot of the time in this huge 30 acres of
wanted enslaved people in their states to count. Why?
Sorry?
The bigger your slave population, the more money you just
I'm going to slip you in here.
Okay. There's some background noise.
The northern states were like, wait a minute. So you don't consider enslaved people to be
Hello? Philip, did we lose you?
Somebody, no, I'm here. Sorry, I thought somebody was talking to you.
No, I know. I heard, I was just hearing some background noise, and I just,
okay.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
The other piece that I worked on while I was there is this piece. I worked on a couple of these pieces, a little bit difficult to see because of the light here, but this is a stainless steel and neon piece. And I've worked in neon a lot over the years. And I really like the idea of combining this structural fabrication with neon. And so I have a couple of these pieces that I made there. And it's just something that I think I'd like to do a little bit more of.
The minimalist pieces seem to be quite desirable with a lot of interior designers and stagers, I feel like.
Oh, yeah?
Because they work well in various spaces. Can we actually, can you kind of get a little bit closer to the front?
Yeah, here, look, I'll here. Oops. Yeah, if you could, I'm sorry, there's a bit of sun on this piece here, but if you could see that.
Yeah.
Does that work better?
Oh, that's good. That's good. There you go. That's great.
Okay. Yeah. And when you get in close, the details of it, I really like the way the neon works with the stainless steel. Stainless steel is sort of reflective and polished, and the neon is just by inherently sort of bright. And I also love the ends of the neon. I always did the glow.
Yeah, the reflection looks amazing. With the light and everything, it's well placed there. I like that.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
I also have been working on some other neon pieces, and this is one of them. These are animated. I don't know if you can see, but the neon changes in brightness, and I've been using the same idea of the waves, but using it now as an electronic pattern that runs through a grid of neon tubes like this. And this is something that I'm working on at the moment. I've got several of these pieces in the studio that I'm working on.
And is there any way you can show everyone about how the piece works? Because I think that that's an interesting detail to know, that you can lower the brightness, raise it.
Oh yeah. Let me see if I can turn it up a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. If you see. Yeah, these are electronic, and so with a local electronic engineer who has been very helpful actually, and I will tell him what I'm looking for in terms of a pattern, and he will then advise me on what is, what type of circuitry to use. When I first started out working with Neon, we did it all with mechanical switching devices. And of course, that's all gone by the wayside now. And now we're all fully computerized, which means, of course, that we don't understand anything about it, or people like me don't, at least. So but I always work with an engineer on this kind of stuff. And I really enjoy the process of working with them. Sorry, I'm shaking here a little bit.
No, it's okay. It's okay. No. Yeah. It actually works well with this piece because with the light, it's a nice play. So don't worry.
So you can see this is
the tubes themselves, though. Now I'm very curious. So the tubes themselves, where do you find these tubes?
It's an interesting world because a lot of neon fabricators are actually disappearing. Okay. LEDs have taken over in the sign industry, and neon was always a medium that the sign industry used because it's very bright and it's very durable. It lasts for years and years. But I was lucky enough to find a guy called Terry Abrahamian here in LA who has a shop, and he has a glass bender, and she makes the tubes up to order. And he's a lovely guy, and so I've been very lucky to work with him of late.
That's fantastic. And for conservation reasons too, you probably order
Are you still there?
Yes, hello.
I see we're sort of frozen up here. Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying that obviously for conservation and for sort of a long-term plan with some of these sculptures, you end up having to buy in mass quantity just to make sure that you have the supplies, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully neon will be something that survives this transition period. It's something that's been around for well over 100 years, and there's a lot of neon around, and hopefully there will be people still working in it. And it's now become a sort of craft that a lot of artists are using also. And so I'm pretty confident that neon will be around for a while, and that means that somebody would be able to replace a tube if it did break. As you know, I think I worked on a big piece like using this kind of structure in London. And this was a piece that I built in 1972 in London. And right after I came out of art school, and it was also dimming and it was weather sensitive. And that piece was on a museum that did a very good job of looking after it for a long time. But just recently, they sort of started saying, well, this is too complicated. We don't want to look after this anymore. And so that brought up a whole argument about, whether this kind of art is something that needs to have a different sort of curatorial approach on the part of the museums and collectors. People, this sort of work has to be maintained, and it's a little bit more onerous than a bronze sculpture, let's say, to own and to look after. But I think it's very important that people learn how to do this and, do this actively.
Well, I think that this is a piece that, yes, it's more onerous to own and to work with, but at the same time, there's so many other benefits to it rather than necessarily a bronze piece. Like you have
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's an interactive piece, which adds so much to the work itself. I mean, it's constant. You can have it set so it's constantly changing, which I think is makes it so exciting.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm very much in favor of people figuring out how to do this. I mean, if you take an artist like Nam June Paik, for instance, I love his work. You know, he used a lot of television sets, and because those pieces were built in the 60s and 70s and 80s, the television sets are cathode ray tubes. You know, the old heavy glass tubes, and a lot of his work uses multiples of the same TV set to make up a picture. And nowadays, you know, those are very difficult to find, those particular tubes. So if somebody wants to restore a piece like that, they have to have actually bought some of those some time back or find them on eBay somewhere and add them in. I mean, it's a bit of a challenge, you know. But his work is very valuable and it's beautiful work, and you know it needs to be maintained and restored.
Of course, but that's also what increases its value too, is because it's becoming almost obsolete. You can't, if you don't have access to the material, then the works themselves become rare. So that's also something to be thought of too. That is that these pieces are not just because they're interactive, but they're becoming sort of more and more unique, I think.
Yeah.
Which is great. And then now you have a few other pieces, the paintings that you were probably going to show.
Oh yeah, I'll show you. This is a piece that I've been working on. I'm sorry about the sunlight on it, but
that's okay.
This is a painting that I've been working on, a whole series of them actually, and these are based on horizons. So this is like a multiple horizon image. I don't know if you know, but in some of these old sailing manuals, when you arrived at a coast, at a foreign coast that you'd never been to before, it's always very difficult to know where you are, you know, where you have landed. And so in these old sailing guides, they would do a sketch of what the ocean, of what the land looks like from this particular spot, and you could actually locate yourself based on matching the sketch to the coastline that you're seeing. So this is something that people don't use very much anymore, but a lot of the old sailing manuals had these kinds of sketches in them, and so I used that idea in these paintings as a way of it's another way of drawing a horizon and of taking this wave idea and developing it into a series of paintings.
That's great. And are these acrylic on canvas?
This is acrylic on canvas, yeah.
Okay. And these works, and when was this work done?
This is about 3 months old or so.
Okay.
So most of the work I'm showing you right now is all pretty recent, you know. And say in some cases it's paint, some cases it's sculpture, some cases it's neon, some cases it's steel, and it's a sort of way that I like to work in lots of different ways, lots of different media, but using the same sort of idea as the starting point or as the inspiration for the work.
That's great. And then you have...
I've got another piece I can show you here that is, I don't know if you could see this. It's a stainless steel sculpture, and it's, again, a wave piece. It's like a wave going through. If you look here, it's, you know, it goes in and out. And this is something I worked on about 2 years ago. So this is another version of this sort of wave idea.
Yeah, no, it seems to be a recurring theme. That's
right.
Very good. No, that's it's fascinating. I mean, the Lost Horizons and it makes me think of a few different artists from the Bauhaus period too. Just the
Oh
sailboat
yeah.
in the water. Yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's funny. No, and then
Anyhow, it is interesting for me to have a sort of series of ideas to work from, and these are sort of starting points. And you know, the idea, I'll just follow my nose once I get started. So the idea often where it finishes up is not, it is quite different from where it started, but that's fine by me, you know.
what would you say that across the board with both with the sculpture, neons, and paintings, that's sort of the process that you start and kind of let it happen organically, or do you
Yeah.
do a bit more
Yeah,
calculation?
definitely. I don't like to sort of constrain the idea too much. I like to have it in a way that that the idea can develop itself. And you know, it's nice to have a starting point because that gives you a structure to get going on. But after that, it's nice from my point of view. It's great to be able to let the thing develop of its own, as though the idea itself has its own energy.
And how long did it take you to make this painting, for example?
This painting was probably about a week. And it went through a lot of different stages before it got to here, you know. And I think actually it didn't start out as this idea of the horizons I was telling you about, but it sort of developed into that. And you know, one carries all sorts of ideas in one's head, and as you're working, if you're working loosely enough, those ideas have a way of coalescing and developing and then appearing on the canvas. You know, and so from an artist's point of view, that's a fun thing to discover something new and in the process of making something. You know.
Of course. No, that's, I feel like that makes the process even more exciting.
Right.
Because it just sort of develops on its own, and you participate in the evolution, but maybe you don't have full control of it, you know, which is
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Which is always great. But then with your sculpture, though, with the neon sculptures and the bronze sculptures, obviously putting together the maquettes and the large monumental size sculptures, those take, I would imagine, a lot longer than the paintings do, right?
Yeah, they do, and they're also require more of a deliberation. You know, you have to work the idea out more clearly ahead of time because there are certain decisions that are made early on that guide the whole thing. I mean, with this particular piece here, this neon piece, this steel work that I worked on was really just sort of thrown together. I just sort of started working and thought, oh, okay, I'll add a piece here, add a piece there. I knew I was going to add these neon pieces in as well. So I had those to hand, and that sort of set the scale and to a certain extent the form, but the form developed sort of organically as I was working on it. And that's one of the nice things about welding. You could just hold something up and it's stuck, you know, it's
yeah, that's very true. I see the sculpture though, and I fear holding these tubes. I might drop one, and then, you know, and that's that's not something, it's not something you want to be thinking about or doing. But that's my first reaction is it almost, even though it's heavy and you're welding it together, I get the impression that it's also so fragile, you know.
Well, it is. Yeah, it's an interesting contrast between a fragile material and a very durable material. In fact, the neon is pretty durable, also. You know, and this would work just fine in a domestic setting. You know, you could bump into it; and it wouldn't really hurt too much. You know.
That's good
but,
to
you know, it's glass, so you don't want to drop it. You know?
No, of course not. No, of course not. Yeah. I don't think I would hold it with kid gloves. So. That's the way to handle it. Now I'm also looking at, there's the painting in the corner there. Is that a recent work as well?
Oh yeah, that is not quite so recent. Let me get it out a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this is a piece that I worked on a series of vertical stripes, and I did a whole show of these paintings about a year and a half ago in LA at the LA Art Corps Gallery. And this piece was actually called Notre Dame, and it was painted the day that Notre Dame burned down. Oh, wow. And I had just been to Notre Dame, you know, maybe 6 months before. And so I was quite distressed by the whole idea of that beautiful building burning down. And so I guess the color, the range of color came from that, because I was looking at video of this poor building on fire. But I did a whole series of these paintings with vertical stripes. And if you look, if you turn this around, it's not a million miles away from the piece above it, right? So even though the origin of the works are different, a lot of the formal language that I work with is similar, you know.
It is similar. Well, also that color palette reminds me of your neon work as well. Just
yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah,
and the orange and the red. So that's
yeah. And I'm very interested in the way the colors interact with each other, and that's something that's been with me ever since I was at Chelsea Art School in London. We had a wonderful color theory teacher called Anne Rees-Mogg, who talked to us about that. And it's been an obsession of mine of how colors change when you put them next to each other. And you know how a blue next to a red will look quite different when it's next to yellow, and the blue actually changes. So the way you perceive color is something that's of great interest to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, and the thing is that it also factors in the other elements surrounding it, how it's lit, where it is, if it's in direct sunlight or not, or if it's, you know, if it's in a dark room, sort of what colors become more apparent than others. So that's very interesting. I mean, the color field study you could do a whole hour conversation just on that alone.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have time for some questions now. If anyone has any questions for Philip or for myself, feel free to ask. Or you can put them in the chat, and I'll be sure I can ask them for you. Is anyone?
Yeah, give me 1 minute. I'm just going to go. My phone is running out of juice, so I'm just going to get a charger. I'll be right back.
No problem. Anyway, if anyone has any questions for me or anything, David, yeah.
Well, I just love his obsession with the sort of transient nature of water, and how, you know, he feels the need to make something that's so fleeting and impermanent last. You know, that seems to be like the artist's condition, that they want to somehow say something and then sort of stretch it so that it has an existence of its own. And I see that in a lot of his work. You know, even all those little horizons on the painting. I mean, it all seems to link up with, you know, the voyage and the voyage of trying to understand. And I love all that. The only other thing I wanted to sort of mention was the metal kind of scaffolding structures. I mean, that seems to be slightly separate. And although I can relate the neon tubes to the kind of the transient flickering surface of the water and the reflected light, those metal rods seem very different. And it's as though the bamboo, if he makes it and the bamboo gets cut and it's sitting there, it'll be growing still. You know, those sort of diagonal pieces are like the leaves, and so that there's like two bodies of work. From what I've noticed.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a very good point, and I can see that too. That there's the bronze sculptures are they're weighty and they're sort of stationary and very different from what you were saying about his drawings and the neon sculptures, where they have more of a relationship about this transient nature and the idea of movement and trying to capture and that or as Philip said, hit pause on a moment in time. And it's, I feel like that there's a nice duality between the two, between sort of the stationary and the moving. It's a nice play. So I feel like there's rhythm in both of them too.
They have that sort of matrix, a kind of grid that one can sort of see through in the way water can be translucent, or a copse of bushes. You can sort of see details that are framed and you're seeing through. I can see that side of it too. Yeah. Sure. So that would bring them together on that level.
Yeah. You know, one of the other ideas that I'm sort of obsessed with is forests and plants. And I spend a lot of time walking around forests in these vertical arrangements of trees and leaves, and with plants, you get that thing that you were talking about, where you get all these little lattices of leaves overlaid on top of each other. And it's a very chaotic, sort of confusing looking arrangement, but at the same time, it has an order to it. And I'm always sort of striving to try and find what is that order that it has, and why is it so fascinating to me, you know?
Yeah, no, I think David brought up a very good point, and it's a good way to describe like the body of your work. I mean, there's two sides to it, which is great. It's a good sign. It means that you aren't stuck specifically doing one thing. You're really exploring and experimenting, as you should be, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, anyone else have any comments or would like to share something? No more for today. Well, I think, Philip, we filled them in on quite a bit here, and everyone, if anyone is interested in reaching out to me or to Philip in regards to the work or any further questions, I'm going to put my information in the chat, and then let's just see here. I'll just put it to everyone in the chat, my details. And then that way everyone can access it. And I just wanted to say thank you, Philip, for taking the time today to bring us into your studio and to show us what you've been working on so diligently. It's beautiful work, and I'm very excited about it. And thank you, everyone, for attending as well.
Okay. Well, thank you, and thanks for your time, and it's been a great pleasure.
Definitely. Take care. Have a lovely weekend, and happy Halloween to everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.